Hi, where the heck have I been? Oh, great question. Great question. Yeah, where have I been? Well, a lot of amazing things and yet tragic things have been happening. So it's called life. And I have been off social media for the most part and taking a break and not podcasting too much because I just have had trouble sitting down and in front of my computer to deal with all of it, because as I have been working on my own spiritual wealth, which Dr. David Gruder and I talked about in our podcast series, Money, Shadow, Freedom, he says that, in his words, I say it in different words, but I love what he says. Spirit creates wealth. Wealth creates money. And I have put my spiritual side on a big hold and little by little allowing it to reemerge. And it's been there very, very intensely since I was a child, pretty much since I was conceived. And so it is definitely my most profound sense of self, and yet I've had to put it on the back burner for a long time because it seemed like, although I was so connected to spirit, the human life always eclipsed, shadow, and trumped it and kept me down. And so thanks to Dr. David, really sparking that for me. It's been a long journey of regaining my relationship to my spiritual side since my sister died of slow suicide back in 2006. And then all of a sudden I reconnected in a big way to my spiritual side. And then I was like, my spiritual side is very active. My spiritual side loves to dance, and ranch. Meaning I have not been able to do anything that requires me to sit down because my spiritual side has me flying around, taking care of all my horses and my animals and my ranch and building cages and coyote proofing stuff and dancing. And I've been taking dance class after dance class, and I just need to keep moving. I've even started a garden. And I don't garden, but I was thinking it's time for me to grow my own organic fruits and vegetables, because I have some, but to focus on that because I have free-range hens and a rooster, and they lay every single day eggs that are free-range, organic, non-GMO. And so little by little, this is all feeding into, no pun intended, my spiritual side. Spirit creates wealth, wealth creates money, but it's, for me, my spirit has always created magic. And so that's the long answer to where have I been. And I've actually had podcasts to post, but again, I just wasn't feeling it. I just didn't have that particular mojo. My mojo was somewhere else. Now, that said, I'm back this morning because and only because of what's happening with this whole wave of celebrity suicides. They've been there, but somehow this was very, very significant in that Anthony Bourdain, I think that's how you pronounce his name, Anthony Bourdain, his suicide was so tragic and touched so many people because he's a chef. So he's a real person working his career who becomes this massive celebrity that almost every human being on the planet can relate to, because he cooks and then he eats. And he's real. He's just so freaking real. And I had no idea until I researched it how much of a celebrity he really was. That's not the typical movie star celebrity. And he has really awakened us in this suicide epidemic. And that said, I mean, my whole shtick, this whole podcast is about depression and suicide. Hence, I have had always the suicide hotlines and resources listed with this podcast. And so I'm so sad for the suicides. Kate Spade also, and then many more follow that. And we'll talk about it in a minute. But I'm so electrified in talking about this because depression and suicide, it's my jam. It's something I've had to deal with my whole life. And now with all of the media coverage and this impacting so many people on so many levels, I had no other choice but to talk about it. And I chose a very special person, a human being, female, to share this podcast with me. She is an actual formal client, but also an incredible spiritually based human being. And that said, hi there, radically radiant Rachel. How are you?
Hi, Karen.
Yeah.
Thank you for the intro.
You're welcome.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. I know that was unscripted. I had no idea what I was going to say. And I'm like, oh, I might have to do a couple times because I haven't podcasted a while. But anyway, thank you. What did you hear from that intro?
You're just amazing.
Elaborate, please. I'm all ears. I'm listening. Yeah.
No, just your heart for other people to help them and to really understand the mind, and help them to be the best version of themselves and to get rid of the negative side on the brain that wants to take over, basically.
Yeah.
So I am personally very thankful for you, and I would not be here if it wasn't for you. So, physically.
Yeah. That. Thank you for sharing that. And what you're really saying. Do you want to say it or what I'm hearing? But you say it.
Well, I mean, I've had a lot of issues and struggles in the past, and I understand. I, for the first time, can really understand why people would commit suicide, and it's something that I never, ever talk about, just because when somebody says, "Oh, you struggle with that," not necessarily literally killing yourself, but more on the slow. Giving up the will to live, which is the same thing. So giving up that will to live, I can definitely understand why people do that, only because I've experienced it for myself. And as somebody who nobody in a million years would ever think, it's kind of interesting coming forward and really talking about it, because I think more people need to talk about it. Because it's something that we hide inside until we can't get the help we need, and then we give up. And giving up looks different for many different people, whether it's ODing or whether it's guns or however, including giving up the will to live can happen in any sorts of different ways. And so I think more people do need to talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly right. # never silence your pain. Now, there's so many different ways to go. I'm thinking just, no, let's deal with the most important issues, in that I do believe, especially in a first world country like the United States, and I was born here, so I'm American, and I can only speak for myself and what I've experienced in my life. But I do believe that almost 100% of human beings, especially in first world countries, will have a thought of not necessarily I'm going to kill myself, but what if I don't wake up? I don't want to be here anymore. What's the point of life? I don't understand. That is natural, I believe, for human beings. And yet, I know for myself, I have always gone to the death card because early on as a child, I knew that life made no sense if I'm miserable and unhappy and then I die one day. I already knew as a very, very old soul, and I believe you're also an old soul, that as a child, I mean, what kid really thinks this? I wasn't out playing. I was like contemplating the meaning of life and going, wait, I just don't understand this. This doesn't make any sense. And I said to myself, about 8, 9, or 10, I said, and I remember clear as day looking, I was standing in my house that I grew up in New Jersey, in the living room, staring at the dining room table, and I thought, why? I don't understand life. We're unhappy, then we work, and then we die. And that was my line of thinking. Like, I don't get it. If we're unhappy and we have to work our whole life and then we're dead, but I didn't have the answers. So that's what I call, the wicked cycle of insanity. I had no answers. I couldn't make the connections. And that drove me. And it showed up, not having those answers shows up as, and it did my whole life, which went undiagnosed and untreated, this chronic low-grade depression. Now, suicide.org, the number one reason why people commit suicide and succeed and try is because of untreated depression. And so then it fell right into, well, I want to die. Or I actually said I want to die. I don't want to live. I don't get living. Like, I actually said those things to myself growing up my whole life. And when things didn't work out, I'm like, I'm out. I die anyway, so why not just go early? And quite frankly, there were things, I was so reckless, even though I was a classic overachiever, right? And on paper and on the outside, I look good. But on the inside, I was quite fatalistic. I just did things, I was cavalier, I just like, whatever, boop, boop, boop. And I don't even know how I made it. I don't even know, so many times I should have been killed or something bad should have happened. And it didn't. So I had to say, well, isn't that interesting? Now, I never thought to like blatantly kill myself, but I always thought, wow, if I didn't wake up, again, when things weren't working, but from my perceptions, my whole life didn't work. I was unhappy. I didn't have enough. It was never enough. I wasn't good enough. I didn't get enough attention from my mother. My mommy, there were too many kids running around. She was always too busy. My dad was an absentee dad, always working. He was always in New York trying to build his business. I was lost. And yet we had everything. And my parents were self-made. They made a crap load of money. And everything on the outside was great. I didn't ever want for anything. So I came from wealth and had some of the most amazing privileges growing up, but it was counterintuitive. The more privileges I had, the deeper the depression got, the darkness. It was this eerie emptiness, always this deep-seated emptiness of it doesn't make any sense. And the reason I have to talk about Anthony and Kate Spade, mostly Anthony, is on the outside. I mean, Rachel, who doesn't want to travel around being a celebrity, eating and drinking your way around the world? Really?
That's what I would love to do.
Exactly. Now, I'm not a big eater. Like, I'm not a big fan of eating.
I love to eat.
I know. Everybody loves to eat. Most people love to eat. And this has been since I was a baby. Don't even get me started, but I didn't even eat as a baby. My mom had to dance around the table and trick me and then shove the food in my mouth. But anyway, I could travel around the world and try different martinis. Now, that would be good for me, right? With a little bit of food.
Yes.
That sounds good. Actually, that's a show. That sounds good to me.
It is a show.
Yeah. But most humans, exactly, you would love to do that and just be a person who becomes a chef and then a massive celebrity, And so the whole thing I really want to address is how come you, on the outside, which is also you, Rachel, you said it. No one ever know you had these thoughts in your life about yourself and, not wanting to be here. And so, and the same with me. And the thing with me is, oh my God, I look so good on paper. I look so almost perfect. I mean, I had a teacher in high school she talked about how I dressed. She's like, you're perfect. Like, she was snide about it though. I have never seen you dress perfectly. I've never seen you wear the same thing twice. Well, and then interestingly enough, which was not my intention, I was voted best dressed. Even though I was not popular. I hated high school. I was not popular. And I was bullied. I was discriminated against. I grew up Asian American, Chinese American, in a all white high school. No No Mexicans. No blacks. No anything else. Eastern Europeans. Nothing. It was just Caucasian, American Caucasian, Italian, and Jewish, some Jewish, but I don't even remember that many Jewish people. I think one. So, it was crazy and brutal. I was made fun of. I was bullied. It was horrific. So on the outside, it all looked pretty good. On the inside, dark, dark, dark. And so how do you have everything on the outside? So I was a great student. I did all the activities. Oh, and here's another thing. I was such a good girl, which probably explains my attitude today. The rebel vigilante, letting the real me come through. But I was the perfect child, the perfect girl. I achieved everything. I never said anything, and I looked good. I looked the part. Children are to be seen and not heard. That was me. I never, ever gave my parents any trouble growing up. I was doing my own thing. I started riding horses at 7 and just kept training by myself with no parental supervision or prompting, and showed up for almost 5 years like clockwork to my horseback riding lessons on my own, because I had to go to the giant estate next door and walk all the way over there, climb over the fence and climb up the hill and go myself with my little check in my hand. And I did that.
Wow.
Yes. Right. So then what happens? Like, what happened? So that said, before I go on, Rachel, it's the same thing. Yes, you can relate to this. Like, on the outside, you come from a good family, right? You're
everything.
Yeah.
Not only that.
Yeah.
I had every friend you could possibly imagine in school. I don't remember hardly ever. The one time somebody said something to me, the only time I got made fun of in school that I remember, after school, my football player guy friends beat him up. So he didn't really say mean things to me in high school. So mine was a little bit on the opposite side. So everything was perfect.
Yeah, that's even more perfect. For you to have that, yes, even more perfect is that you had friends and you were accepted and you had fun and you enjoyed it. You had friends galore. I had none of that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so you would think, of course, mine would make sense. I feel very alone. Nobody gets me. I'm perfect on the outside and so broken and riddled with self-hatred on the inside. That would make sense. But yours makes even less sense, right? To have.
Oh, yeah. I had my dad's credit card until I got married. I had the perfect childhood. I had both parents They both loved me, both spent time with us. Mom worked at my school, sacrificed so that she could spend time with us and we could get free tuition at school. I literally had everything you could possibly ever want.
Yeah. Wow. And then we have to ask ourselves what happened. Okay, and I need to talk about it, because what happens, I believe, based with case studies and my clients but I'm the best worst case study on the planet, I feel, is that it all has everything to do with the disempowered, unconscious perceptions, beliefs, and deep-seated wounds and tragedies that we go through emotionally and spiritually. That's what happens, and we don't see it because it is buried. It is unconscious. The brain stores it way back in the filing system, and it's covered up because we have to overcompensate, and it all has everything to do with fear, and that's what does it. And it has to do it because otherwise it makes no logical, rational sense. Yes?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk for myself. Is when I was 1 year old, my older sister, she's 15 years older than me, like a mother. My mom was not affectionate at all. She was very distant, cold, typical Chinese, hate to say it, unemotional. And, but I had an older sister, but my mother sent her away, but I didn't know that. So I do remember my sister leaving and me standing across the room. And I remember clear as day again, but I'm just 1. I remember at some level I knew she's standing there about to walk out the door into the garage. And she's standing there with her furry hat with the little chin straps with the furry balls. I'll never forget that. I love that hat. And I said to myself, I knew she was leaving and I'd never see her again. But the thing that I actually said was, how could she leave me? Doesn't she love me? And that was it. And I had no idea. It was only through this work. The work that I practice, teach, and preach is what saved my own life. And nobody could save me. Nobody could save me, but only one person spoke up. We'll get into that in a minute. There are signs. There are obvious signs. We got to pay attention, people. We got to pay attention because the signs are written all over the frickin' place. It's just, do you have the courage to speak up and say something? And I do, Rachel. I spoke up, didn't I? I showed up in your energy field because you called it in spiritually. I spoke up. And that's why you are here with me on this podcast this morning. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So there I was in my brain. I made the association, which is how the human brain is programmed, through fear. There was fear, but it didn't register as blatant fear. It registered as abandonment and rejection. And I had that there. And that was it. That's what set it off. And now my brain is forever, eternally programmed to be unlovable and leavable. And my whole life was built on that foundation. Now, every human being on the planet has this phenomenon closer to ages 2 and 3. And a lot of times people say, I don't remember, because it's hidden, it's unconscious. We don't have any conscious awareness. It took me years to, I started my process officially in 2009. So it took me several years to figure that out. And I didn't have a me to coach and help me. I had to figure it out on my own, and I did, thank goodness. But when I saw that, I thought, oh, well, of course. And then the next, I call them mind viruses, right? Disempowered perceptions and associations. And so what happened was the next one, and it keeps escalating. And then everything is said and done by the age of 8. And by the age of 8, I do believe we have our self-defense coping mechanism, and mine started at 6 to, instead of feeling pain, I became a classic perfectionist and overachiever. So these things are never addressed. So as we get older, then we can become, which I did, more successful, and you did too, Rachel, more successful in every aspect of life. You got married, had 2 beautiful kids, right? And your life is going well on the outside, and underneath it, we have these insidious, diabolical viruses that lurk unconsciously and subconsciously. And this is what I believe creates the severe depression where people like Anthony, right, and his close friends call him Tony, but Anthony, no matter how much and how famous and how successful he was on the outside, on the inside, he couldn't make the connections as to why he still felt alone, depressed, right? Angry, resentful. And I did hear, and intuitively I know this, after the divorce from his first wife, that was it for him. That was the final nail in the coffin to start the spiral. Yet everything, whatever happened in his childhood early on, from inception, closest to ages 2 to 8, I believe those childhood wounds is what led him to ultimately take his own life, because he couldn't connect the dots. He couldn't make sense of all this great stuff on the outside, and yet feeling so dark, alone, and empty on the inside. Welcome to my life, people. Rachel?
Right.
Would you like to say anything about that?
Yeah. Absolutely. So for me, I hid everything.
Mm-hmm.
So even any type of abuse from anybody in my extended family,
mm-hmm.
I hid everything
mm-hmm.
For years. And I just kept it and held everything inside until I couldn't hide it anymore.
Yep.
And then, obviously, I spoke up. And even through that, I took everything out and through business. And I put my identity into business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing very successful in the business sense. And so I had that. And then that came crashing down. And once that came crashing down, the first business, I lost it then. And then I tried again. And after the second business failure,
mm-hmm.
I could not cope at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not want to live.
Yeah.
And there were many times, and I remember one specifically, leaving my friend. We got into a fight, and I mean, I hardly get into fights with anybody, and we got into a really big fight, and I just left bawling my eyes out.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was driving on the 14 freeway, and I had to make a choice of whether I was going to live or not, because I knew that if I didn't make a choice right then and there, that I would get into a car accident and I would have died.
Mm.
I could feel it. And it was the first time I actually had to make a choice. I'm going to choose to live. And for a month after that, every single day, I had to choose to live. I'm going to live. And I said that to myself out loud. I said it to myself quietly every day for as many times as I could. I choose to live. Because my brain didn't want to, but my mind did. And so it was a struggle. It was a fight. It was a literal, like, no, I don't want to live. Yes, I do want to live. No, you don't want to live. Yes, you do. And I had to really make a choice and make it become a pattern of, and overcome that mentally of, I choose to live. And now I feel so much better knowing that I choose to live. And it's a choice that I made consciously and unconsciously now, to be able to choose that no matter what happens. Even if I'm having a really bad day, I've made that choice, and so now that choice is more powerful than anything that I could have ever done.
Oh, yes. And so you're so fortunate to have that consciousness that I didn't get. I didn't have that. But what I did have I had
You didn't have training like I did, though.
I know, haha. You're more blessed because you had me to help you. Yep, I had no training, and I had no help, but yeah. I did have. Wait a second, before I start there. So in that month, I remember you and I talking.
Yes, and I remember what you said to me.
What?
You said to me, Rachel, just go ahead and just die. So that's me. Just go ahead. If that's what you want, just go ahead and do it. Why are you wasting time? Just die.
Okay,
I was like, whoa. Yeah. Okay. And those words, like, really changed my thought process. Because I'm like, it was almost like one of those behavioral things where the opposite. You know how people do the opposite of what you say?
Yes.
It was an attention grabber unconsciously for me to switch it, and I'm like, okay, so you just want me to die? No, wait, no, you don't want me to die. And it was definitely probably the changing path when I heard those words from you. Well, just do it already. What are you waiting for? Why are we on this call?
Wait. Was this in your coaching session?
Yes, in my coaching session.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, just disclaimer, people, don't ever use these techniques unless you are a trained expert and professional.
Yes.
And in my defense, I know for a fact I said that at the perfect time, having set you up and set the context. Otherwise, forget it. You cannot say that to people. But I love it. And I didn't say it that boldly. I know I didn't. Something I would.
That's how I took it.
Yes, that's how.
It was great.
What?
It was good because it's exactly what I needed to hear.
Exactly.
Because I did. I needed that reprogramming of the brain, and it was the perfect thing that I needed to hear. Otherwise, I wouldn't have really. I would still be feeling sorry for myself right now. Or actually, I'm sorry, I wouldn't even be here. So you saved me. You saved my life when you said those. When you said that to me, it changed everything. And
yes,
I'm very thankful that you spoke up and said stuff that needed to change my brain process and switch things for me. And it was a big help.
Okay, so a couple things I just want everyone to know, right? That was in a formal coaching session. We had built a relationship over a year's time. I understand your profile and what you have been through. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I did not say it that harshly, but I do remember saying, right? Yeah, exactly. I know. I said, yeah, you could not live. Like, that is an option. Let's not resist it. I mean, if that's how you feel, who am I to talk you out of that? Because I know it's just a feeling, right?
Right.
And I also knew the symptoms. If it were anything more serious, of course, I feel I can handle it only because I've been there. And I've had one therapist after another, some of the greatest, and they couldn't handle it. Like, they never saw anything. No one diagnosed me with depression. Okay, hello, what are we doing? And that degree did what? No, I feel only through my own experience I can go with that. I'm highly intuitive, and I had to do what I had to do, knowing what worked for me, and that's the techniques that I use. And then I called you on it powerfully, again, making sure, like, we built up to that conversation. We built up to that.
Absolutely.
And that's how you heard it, correct? Like, you heard it, that was pretty funny.
Yes.
But I said it in such a way that it interrupted your habitual stored neuronal patterns, okay? And that's why it works. It's counterintuitive. And really, you're entitled to your perceptions. You're entitled to your feelings. You just don't want to act like you're entitled, period. You're entitled to your perceptions and your feelings. And your feelings follow your perceptions. And no one better to understand your plight than me. And so when I allowed you, and in a way gave you permission to share and be allowed, okay? To feel that way and then to call you on it. Calling people on their stuff powerfully, right? Without judgment and criticism, energetically. That vibration has to be there. It works like a charm, is to just allow people, but to hold them accountable for it and call them on their crap, you know?
Right.
And so, and you know what's so interesting is when I was a personal trainer, I had this client, he was like a dad and a grandfather to me, and he had ALS. And this is well before anything. This was before my real estate career. It was when I was in fitness. And I was to just give him basic exercises in his home. And I would go, and then his wife had passed away, which was tragic. His first and only wife, married for like 60 years. She dies, and he's devastated. He doesn't want to go on. He has a daughter who was a lot older than me, but he never shared any of that with her. And then one day in a training session, he said, you know, I don't know that I want to live. And I freaked because I had no training. But my intuition said, I understand, and that would be okay. And then I started crying, and I said, and I get emotional. I said, Stan, if that's your choice and your decision, I just want to thank you so much for everything you've done for me. And you've been like a father and a grandfather to me. And I will really miss you, and I love you. Now, this is my client. And I even said, have you ever told Janice any of this? And he said, no. And he only told me. And I freaked, but that's how I know my wisdom. There's no way, no one's ever trained me for that. No one ever told me. I never read any books. But all I knew was to kick into high gear and just go, thank you for being in my life. Thank you for all your advice. He's very successful, living at the top of Bel Air. Thank you for your wonderful heart. Thank you to you and Julie for everything. Thank you. I love you. You mean so much to me, and I would really, really miss you. And I had tears in my eyes like I do now, and I just sat there, and I didn't say anything because I was kind of in shock. And all of a sudden, his energy shifted, and he kicked out of it. Like all of a sudden, I could tell he kicked out of it. And I'll never forget that. You know, sometimes I think, oh, I'm not doing enough to help the world. I'm not doing enough for people. I'm not doing enough. But if I could do that for him without any training and on my intuition alone, spiritually, now that I'm having this conversation, right, and you listening so well, Rachel, I've done my job. I'm done. I quit. I'm going to go be a cowgirl in Montana.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So then knowing I had whatever, the gift, the premonition, the intuition, whatever it is, that has worked historically, and that works today, is to allow people their feelings and notice the symptoms, right? To say it's okay. So that's brilliant, Rachel, that you bring that up, that I hit you with your own stuff, didn't I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. You keep saying, I don't want to live. Well, frankly, girlfriend, I'm tired of hearing about it. Okay, then off yourself to the back of the head. Okay? Don't even mess with Acacia. Because after a while, when people keep repeating the same thing over and over, just know and understand they're really trying to say something else underneath it. Mm-hmm. And that's how you know. And so that's like, okay, well, you could. So let's talk about it. Now, I also have another story that I think is very poignant with this. Is quite recently, within the past year and a half, 2 years, maybe even 3 years. Wow, I lose track of time. I have no sense of time. My mother had broken her second femur. So, Rachel, it wasn't a formal coaching session, but I I pulled the same thing on my own mother, but here's what I said. So my mom broke her second femur, and she was devastated and really didn't see any sense of living anymore. Because now she had to go through physical therapy, nothing to live for. She was very depressed. And it's seldom that my mother ever mentions this, but she finally felt safe. And trust me, this has been years of training with my mother since I started this process of my own life and becoming a coach and unconscious, subconscious mind reprogrammer. So she shares, and I could tell she's dark. Like, it was so obvious. And she says, I don't really see any point in living anymore. I don't want to be here. And I said, oh, okay. Well, all right. So let's talk about this. Let's think about it. So what do you have a plan to kill yourself? Silence. That was a test question. I said, do you have a plan? Nothing. I said, well, let me help you.
Oh, boy.
I know. It flew out of my mouth. It was a little rough. Now, that was rough because it wasn't in a formal coaching session, but it was my mom, right? And my mom's a tough nut to crack. So I just said, okay, well, let's think about this. Do you have a plan? No answer. All right, well, let's talk about the ways you might want to do it. And I was testing her. I was trying to figure out how serious she was. I said, well, do you think you want to shoot yourself, or what about, she's like, oh no, I couldn't do that. I said, yeah, then there'd be blood everywhere. Okay. I said, what about carbon monoxide in the garage, right? I said, you could do that. That seems pretty easy. Again, bold, but it just flew out of my mouth and I had to go with it. I don't know who was speaking. Maybe somebody was speaking through me. I don't know, but so what's interesting, so she's like, well, I said, but if you do that, then you're going to be dead. And then, you live alone. So your body's going to be and I watch a lot of crime and I profile so many criminal minds, right? So I'm just going with it. I said, your body's going to probably sit in the garage for a while and then it's going to smell. And then, it's going to be that, then the grandchildren, that's how they're going to remember you, And so, I'm just giving you your options, just helping you out here. But you got to think about that. She goes, oh, yeah. Ooh, that would be gruesome. I think that would be too much. I said, yeah. I mean, you love those grandchildren. I don't even know. You want to leave them with that? I mean, you could. Yeah, no. I couldn't do it. And all of a sudden, reality struck. She just wanted to be allowed her feelings. Now, right. That was bold. I mean, I really went out on a limb on that one. And that was bold. I know. Again, do not try this at home, ladies and gentlemen. Do not do it. I knew what I was doing. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was seeing how far she really was thinking about not living. And she wasn't far at all. Like, I could feel her energy the minute I said, well, what do you think you're going to do? Well, you don't own a gun. That means you got to go out and buy a gun. And I made it nonchalant, right? It takes the charge out of it. Like, kind of like what you were saying, Rachel. I said, well, yeah, go ahead, kill yourself. Oh, yeah. You said, Rachel, I said to you, why are we on this call if you want to kill yourself, right? I said that in a facetious way at some level, and I probably said something like, well, if that's the case and you're not open to hearing more about it, we don't really need to be on this call, right? Something of that nature. Right. And that's what breaks up the neuronal patterning. So when I said to my mom, and I thought, oh no, don't put ideas in her head, but come on. There's so many crime shows on TV. She watches TV all the time. I knew, she's not a dummy. But what I did was I could tell that when I said it, it was too much. Like, it was too much for you in a good way, right?
Right.
Because she just went to, oh, then I'd smell and my body would be decomposing. She actually said stuff like that. I'm like, oh, yeah. Ooh, that would be gross. I just went with it. But then, okay, that didn't take long. I got to tell you, she snapped right out of it. Snapped right out of it. I said, okay, good, because, those grandchildren would be devastated, Mom. And I'd be devastated, and I'd really miss you. And, but you're preaching to the choir. I know exactly how you feel, Mom. I've been there my whole life, which was never your fault. Never your fault.
Right.
And that did it. I'm talking 10 minutes tops. Can you believe this? 10 minutes tops. And she flipped. Not only was she not depressed, she was laughing. She was joking. And she was light. And she's like, okay, when you come in to visit, we'll go out to dinner, your favorite restaurant, and you just let me know. I said, okay. Completely opposite. Like, not even the same person. Amazing. Right? And so... Yeah. It's one of those things, again, it just has everything to do with allowing people their feelings, not shaming them. Oh, and here's the worst thing. But the worst thing, so when people, you didn't share any of that with anyone except me? Is that right, Rachel, in our sessions? Is there anybody else?
Yeah. Not really, no.
Okay. The reason I ask is, here's the thing. What do most people say when somebody says, I want to die or kill myself or not wake up in the morning? What's the natural thing for somebody to say?
You need to get therapy or go to treatment or get medicine or something like that I never would ever want to do.
Exactly. Thank you. You just right. Passed that test.
So why would I want to tell anybody when that's the only thing that they're going to say?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I knew, deep down inside, I know how many people, I never really thought about it. I've got 2 amazing kids. I've got my family, I've got so many friends, like I did in high school, countless. I could literally call up 5 people right now if I was having a hard time, and I know they'd be here to listen to me. Mm-hmm. Or, going out to dinner or whatever. I have so many friends that would definitely be sad and miss me. But at that time, I didn't think about it. Now looking back, I've got people at church, people on social media. There's a lot of people that I know would miss me. And
yes.
It's not fair. It's not fair
right.
to them. It's not fair to me. Because I have lessons that I still need to learn, and I want to make a difference in other people's lives. And I can't do that if I haven't chosen to live. And,
okay.
Or if I'm not living, even physically, if I'm not living mentally, and I'm still stuck in this mindset, I'm not productive at all, and I'm not really living.
Right, so but that doesn't make...
also a physical...
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you here, right?
Absolutely.
That you said it. You didn't see that when you didn't want to live. It's only now in retrospect that you're able to see that. People don't think about that, and you didn't think about it. And then another thing here, with all those people, you are Little Miss Popularity Queen, okay? But yet, who's the only person you told the truth to?
You.
Yes. You couldn't go to any one of those people and tell them that your truth. Isn't that interesting? Uh-huh. Why is that?
I don't know. I'm assuming it's the same thing Anthony Bourdain felt.
Yes.
But I don't know why, to be honest. Why?
Well, the shame, and then would people understand?
Shame.
And then, yes.
Go get medicine.
Yes.
Go to rehab.
Yep.
Go to, because I have PTSD like crazy. Mm-hmm. So, I couldn't control the PTSD at all. So I guess it was, why would I want to first admit that I even had that? Secondly, why would I want to admit that? Because people would look down on me, and they would not think good of me, and I cared about what people thought. Mm-hmm. And then again, I don't want to go to rehab, get treatment, and I don't want to go get on medicine. That was the biggest thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that's perfect, Rachel. That's exactly why we don't go tell people. First of all, the shame and humiliation. Then are they even going to understand, right? Are they even going to get what I have to say? I know with me, it was like nobody ever gets me, so why bother? Plus, I wasn't a talker.
Yep.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Okay, but here's the biggest reason. I don't want to hear what to frickin' do. I know.
Yes.
Okay, don't tell me what to do. I don't want medication. And my therapist, you could have said go to therapy. I did go to therapy. It didn't work. Right? Okay. So that's don't tell people what to do. And anyone who's depressed and suicidal, the last thing they want to hear is go do this, go do that. But then they want to, the thing is, oh no, don't kill yourself. There's help out there. Go do, right? That's what people say. Oh no, you want to die? Wait, what? And then most people are in shock. They don't even want to face it. Is that true, Rachel, if you think about it? Could you imagine?
Absolutely. It's not only true in that sense, but the people that were the closest to me were the ones telling me what to do. And it was putting me even more into this mindset. And you told me, you're like, you need to stay away from everybody. Mm-hmm. And I did. And at one point, I had to literally, I hope my mom and sister never hear this podcast.
They need to
literally tell my mom.
Yeah.
I had to tell my mom and my sister, if you guys do not stop doing this, I cannot hang out with you anymore. Here's your last warning. Like, stop talking to me about this. Because they didn't know how bad I was.
Right.
But they knew that, the loss of the business, all these things, trying to help me get out of that. And I kept saying, guys, back off. Stop talking to me about it. And then I had to confront them and say, listen, no more. Do not say another word or we're not hanging out anymore. And I did confront them and tell them that because they did trigger everything back into me. The more they would try to fix my problems, I didn't need somebody to fix my problems. And you're right. Nobody wants to hear about how they need to work on things.
Yeah, and exactly. We don't want to hear.
There you go.
Yep. And we don't want to be told what to do. And then the other people listening, a lot of times, if they're not telling you what to do right out of the gate, most people will just freeze. Like if you say that, they go into fight mode, fight, flight, or freeze. So fighting is telling somebody what to do and how to fix it. No, don't do that. And then freeze, right? Or flee. People just let it go right over their head and they're thinking to themselves, wait, did they just say they want to live? Are they suicidal? Oh my God, no, just ignore it. See, in people's own fear, they can't even face it. They don't even want to say anything because like, what if something happens? You see how this is a double-edged sword and it's diabolical. You see that, Rachel?
Right.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people experience that. They're not taken seriously, or the people in front of them don't get them. That is the hardest thing. And I believe my sister went through a lot of that. My deceased sister tried to talk about it with them, my family, and my mother is she loves to live in denial. Denial, 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 right? And it ain't a river in Egypt. That's what is also very, very detrimental and feeds right back into the problem. So there are two things here, right? Don't tell us what to do and don't try to fix us. Just shut up and listen and pretend that you understand. If you don't understand, just pretend you do, right? That's a quick way. But what people going through a hard time want is an unconditionally compassionate, empathetic, loving, listening ear, and that is it. They want to be allowed their feelings. That is it. Of course, they need to consult an expert. Yes, yes, yes. But the first thing is to just, people going through the depression and suicidal tendencies need to go to a safe place where we understand, where we get it and we can relate to you and not try to fix you. See, that's the thing. That's what did it, Rachel, when I said, go ahead. I guess you could kill yourself, but let's weigh the consequences first. I'm sure that's how I said it in some way. Yes?
That's exactly how you said it.
Yes. Okay. And so then I gave you options, but I didn't try to fix you. I went along with you. I listened. I was honoring and respecting your wishes. Now, wasn't I?
You were.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. And so I allowed you to just have those thoughts and those feelings. And I wasn't trying to fix you. I was jumping on board. With my mother, same thing. I just jumped on board. Right? But I escalated. With my mother, I was able to escalate it quickly because it's my mother. That's why I was able to be so bold with her. Right? And so that's what we do. It's like, okay, let's just jump on board. So that person goes, oh, great, you're not trying to fix me. The reason why people don't want to be fixed is because it reiterates that there's something seriously wrong with them because they already think there's something wrong. We don't want to feed into that either. So, Rachel, this is so amazing. And I want to touch on, I hope, this is a public podcast that is all over. It's on Spotify. It's on iTunes. It's on iHeartRadio. It's everywhere. And you're like, I hope my mom and sister don't hear the podcast. So here's what I believe. Again, counterintuitive. For them to actually hear it would hurt at first, but then be very powerful in the long run. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go ship it to them. I'm not going to go, hey, Rachel's mom and sister, listen. No.
Okay.
I know, but it's ironic that you'd say something so silly. Right?
Right.
I hope they don't get a wind of this, and yet it's everywhere. Right? Now, the reason you're saying that, let's explore that for just a quick minute. Why do you hope they don't? That's exactly what stopped you in the first place from sharing. Why don't you want them to hear it?
I don't know. Just the basic first reaction is I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Okay, exactly. And that's another reason why people don't speak up. You get this?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm just saying it's so interesting, the things that we say, this is why you couldn't speak up in the first place because you didn't feel unconditional compassion and empathy and people listening without any judgment.
Right.
That's why you couldn't go to them. Okay. So this is hugely important. I love that you said this is, Anthony was going through this. Absolutely. So let's talk about the signs and the power of speaking up. Now, you know me.
Okay.
I'm a speaker-upper.
Yeah.
I'm an in-your-facer. And the only reason I'm in your face is because all of the most powerful mentors, coaches, and people who are willing to help me were in my face. Were in my face. And the reason I'm here today is because only I had already decided to commit suicide. That's when we know it's serious. And so I was done. But I had a charity event. I had one more charity event to host on a zero budget, and I barely made it through. And I was depressed. I had lost a lot of weight. I was drawn out. I was empty and dark. And the only one person that said something was the one who was able to do for me what I do now for you, Rachel, and everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. But he didn't do it harshly. Right. Actually, he said it was very sweet, and he's got a British accent. He was raised in London, even though he's Persian. And so in his British accent, he just said it very gently. But when I spoke with him after the fact, he said, yeah, I saw you were so dead in your eyes. He knew you were not your energetic, vibrant self. And I saw it, but he was the only one to speak up. The only one to speak up. And he didn't tell me what to do. Actually, he did try to fix me because he said, I'm going to pay for a coaching seminar for you, right? But he said that after the fact. So what saved my life and gave me the will to choose to want to work on living. I didn't choose to live. I just said, okay. He actually said this to me. So it was after my charity event for the U.S. Marines Toys for Tots, and I had hosted it. And he said at the end of the evening, he took me aside and he said, Karen, look what you've done here. This is your best event ever on a zero budget. He said, imagine if you had come from your fullest potential. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Again, not paying attention. I didn't want to hear it. I was like, shut up. But then he said this. He said, I may not want to contribute to the world like you want to contribute to the world, but I want to contribute to you. And then I perked up. But what I heard is the same thing we're talking about. He said to me, I may not want to contribute to the world like you want to contribute to the world. That is what did it. I analyzed this over and over, and I figured it out years ago that what had me start to choose to live, not completely, not even close, but I at least woke up, is because he saw in me what I ultimately believed in myself. So at some level, I felt like he got me. He understood me. He saw me. And that's what did it. So that's all we got to do, people, for other people, is just see them, is just do our best to get them and understand them, and to just listen. And that's what did it for me. All the other stuff was crap. As a matter of fact, he said, I want to pay for coaching, a seminar for you, a transformational seminar. And I said, oh, okay, I graciously accept. But you know what? I didn't go. I didn't want to go. But you know how I ended up going? Rachel, so interesting is I put it off. And then I met in a relationship seminar. I met this woman, and she had done the same seminar courses. And then one day we're talking. My life was no better. I was still depressed and still lost. And then all of a sudden she said, what the F? I want to try to keep it clean here. But she goes, what the F are you doing? Your life is effed up. Just effing go. And that's what did it. Tough love approach. She wasn't a coach. She just called me on my crap. And the thing is, I barely knew her. I could have said, what the heck, you da-da-da-da-da, how dare you speak to me that way? No. I had no other choice but to listen because she was right. And what she did was she absolutely jarred me. She interrupted neuronal patterning, habitual patterning, and she called me on my crap, and that's what did it. And again, it was the coaches that were hardcore that called me on their crap. Presentation, not usually good, but I was able to get the energy underneath, and it worked like a charm. And so that's what did it for me. So again, we're saying, not only do we look for the signs, I mean, we have to pay attention. Most people aren't paying attention. They're paying attention to their own life and their own survival and their own dreams, and they're trying to make it on by themselves. But if somebody historically had drug and alcohol issues, hello. By the way, he looks miserable. Isn't that true? Miserable.
Yeah.
He's a fairly good-looking guy with all his hair. But what is up with his wrinkled, ugly, drawn-out face? And I mean ugly, not aesthetically, like he looks sad. He looks depressed, yes?
Yes.
And then, in retrospect, they are saying there were signs. I just listened to a podcast where one of the chefs in Montreal said, he didn't seem the same. He was more withdrawn. Pay attention, people. If you historically know somebody has drug and alcohol problems and they're doing their thing and they're even dropping clues back on the road. We travel 160 days. I miss my first wife. I just broke up with the girlfriend. We got to pay attention. We have to pay attention. I do, but I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. And I did this with my sister, but nobody paid attention to me. Nobody listened to me. And yet, unfortunately, I was right across the board. Nobody paid attention to all the symptoms and the signs, but I did. But at that time, when my sister was going through drug and alcohol eating disorder issues, I was saying it. Dealing with incest issues, sexual abuse, I was saying it, but she wasn't listening and I had no one else to say it. And the way that I said it was not effective because I had no training. That's where I failed.
Right.
But because I went through that, now guess what? I'm an expert. And I'm mastering this stuff. And I'm a master at it. Because of what I had to go through with her and what I did wrong or I didn't do powerfully or where I made mistakes. But they're never, ever mistakes. It had to happen. She's in a better place. She made her choice. You can never truly save someone else. I believe we can save ourselves, and I believe we can give people options to choose to want to save themselves or choose to live. We can give them options. But ultimately, I believe we're the ones within ourselves that makes that ultimate choice to stay or go. I do believe that. And I was speaking up, but nobody was listening because I wasn't effective enough. And through the mastery of it, obviously it's effective. But what I want everyone to get is we got to pay attention. We got to look for signs and not be afraid to speak up. Not be afraid to say something and let people just be where they are and face it. Face everything and rise. Okay? And so...
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Say more. What's amazing? Be specific.
Fear. The way what you said about fear.
Yeah. Is if somebody's...
Face everything and rise.
Yes. Face everything and rise. And don't be afraid to have the hard conversations with people. Don't be afraid to allow them their space. And all we really want, deep down, I believe this fundamentally, is just to be seen, heard, and understood without any criticism, judgment, and shame. That's what I truly believe. No shame. So I know it's scary to deal with somebody who's like not doing well and they want to take their own life. I mean, hello, nothing scarier. But I have to say, we're more powerful and effective to actually help someone when we just accept them for who they are and who they are not. And then, of course, we want to consult experts. Now, I did try when my sister was dying, and that's a sad story real quick, is I remember my sister going through stuff, and I thought, oh my gosh, I got to help her. I'm going to consult an expert. I went into therapy. With a really wonderful therapist for 5 years. 5 years I laid on her couch once a week like clockwork. I think I only missed like 2 sessions in 5 years. But I walked in day one and I said, my sister's dying and I don't know what to do. I tried to consult an expert, but perhaps in retrospect, there are probably better experts. Suicide, incest, sexual abuse, an expert in suicide and depression. She was a MFC, marriage family counselor. Okay, so maybe that would have helped in retrospect. But I did try on my budget then, sliding scale, I tried to consult an expert and get help. So we definitely want to look for, in retrospect, I'm going to say it, people who specialize in that area is going to be your best bet, your best bang for your buck. Okay, so we do want to call in the experts and get help with it. But the first thing we can do, every human being can do, is just listen. Be a listening, be all ears. I love that saying. They say it this way. God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them proportionately. Ha, 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 ha. I say zip the pie hole and be all ears. Hey, it's Karen you're talking to. I'm all ears. That is the Jersey thing, right? I'm listening. I'm all ears. Okay. So anything there, Rachel, you'd like to add into? as to what I just said?
It's helped me to listen to other people more, and even teach my kids the same thing. You know, because I take them to business meetings, I take them out, and the first thing I say is, don't talk, listen. Listen to other people, don't dominate the conversation, because people just want to be heard. And that's the biggest thing. If they don't feel heard, that's the most frustrating thing ever. And it ruins everything. It ruins lives, it ruins relationships, and it also can ruin lives as well. People just want to be heard, and it's a universal thing.
Yes. And so my tagline is real, raw, relatable. Real, raw, relatable is just relate. Just relate. Listen. At first glance, again, consult the experts. So that said, please, 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 right? If there is someone you know or yourself that is depressed, dealing with depression, suicidal thoughts, not wanting to live or wake up in the morning, there are people like myself. Feel free to message me, KarenLoveLee at Gmail. You can find me. That would probably be the best. Instagram, I tend to be on, and Facebook, but mostly Instagram. But KarenLoveLee, hashtag that. You can Google me, message me any which way. You do want to put depressed or suicide in the subject line. I'm here to listen. I'm here to help you and support you and give you options to choose the will to live or not. You know, it's legal now in where is it, Denmark or Norway, where you can.
There's Oregon too.
Yes, where you can do assisted suicide. You know what? Hey, who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? But if you would like to talk to me, please message me. Send me an email. However you'd like to do it, I will absolutely complimentary free consultation that anyone dealing with depression, suicide, but also go to my description and for my podcast, all the different ways, suicide.org, the 800 number, call someone, speak to someone who deals with depression and suicide, and it's worth the call. It's worth the call. And please, if you know of anyone, please speak up. Please say something. Say, hey, would you like to talk? I'd like to listen. I'd like to listen. Do not do any bold tactics or try to counsel them or try to be a therapist or a coach. I don't advise that unless you are an expert, a master, and you have evidence to prove that you are a master and an expert. You have to have hardcore evidence, right, in a court of law to prove that you're a master and expert. Then that's fine. But other than that, do not risk it. It might make matters worse. Rachel, any questions?
Yes.
Comments?
No, I think we covered so much, and I'm excited to move forward.
Move forward.
And help other people.
Yes, and you are helping other people just by sharing your story, sharing who you are and what you go through. I can't thank you enough for showing up, and through our coaching, you've been able to really share so profoundly, so openly, and you know it absolutely helps people. I will guarantee it. I do guarantee it, and it doesn't really matter. You don't do it for those reasons. Do it because it's passionate to you, even if not one person listens to this podcast. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yes. Your passion is to be of service. Your passion is to contribute and help people. Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
And you just being you is the greatest contribution and gift to the world. And on that note, I hear the dogs coming in the background. So
yes,
I'm
putting them outside.
Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Rachel, thank you for being so miraculously magnificent and sharing you and being such a brilliant light for humanity on this planet. I can't thank you enough. And thank you all for listening. And please, any questions, comments, contact me. I'd love to hear from you. And until then, I am wishing everyone, #Indomitable Will, choosing life, and not just choosing life, choosing loving your life on your terms. And I tell you, it's worth it. There's training involved. People, but the training is nothing compared to the magic on the other side. Am I right, Rachel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Nothing is greater than the magic, and you have to be patient. And when it shows up big. So thank you all. And until next time, may all your dreams become true, real, and profoundly part of your soul and your spirit. Thank you so much.